was glad when they said, come let us go to the house of the Lord. I was glad when they say, come let us go to the church with no walls. You are my brother, you are my sister. From all over the world we are united in the house of God, in the church with no walls.
Welcome to the Church with No Walls podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dearbone, and today we continue our conversation with Minister Megan Bailey as we talk about service inside and outside of the church. In the service realm of it, looking at the church, what do you see in terms of church now? It feels like the church still does, and congregations and members do still do service, that they still do get out there and get out in the community and find ways to engage. But it almost feels to me, and this is just me, and maybe this is coming from the Black church, B, from smaller churches that I've gone to, that is not, we talk about it more than we actually do it, or we talk about it without plan, or we talk about it without end game. Versus, some other churches, some other denominations, some other places where they have the plan, they have the purpose, they have the mission, they have the start and the finish. What do you see when you look at the service?
Right. Oh, okay. All right. So first of all, these questions are hilarious because these are things I talk to people about all the time. First of all, we got to stop being reactional. Like we got to stop waiting until the thing occurs, and we've got to be more proactive about the service that we do. Oftentimes, and again, I'm going to speak about the Black church because I'm a part of the Black church and I've been a part of the Black church and I serve in the Black church. A lot of times, especially us, we will wait until something happens. We will wait until the world is on fire before we implement a ministry. What are you doing? If you're going to have a food pantry, have a food pantry and have a plan to be open Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 9 to 4. And quit playing with people's people's needs. A lot of times we're waiting. We're not proactive at all. And we're not talking about a plan. We're not talking about sustainability. We're not talking about the outside resources that we could tap into that would help this ministry to flow. There's no sense of urgency. We are most concerned with how things are going to look, which is weird, rather than the impact that it's going to have.
And sometimes, I think when in the service, it's kind of going off what you said. We look at it, and if in our grand scheme of it, let's say, for example, you have a vacation Bible school or you have a clothing drive, and in your expectation, 100 people are going to show up to either event. You get 5 to 10. Some churches and some congregations will say, hey, we're glad we had that 5 because that's 5 people that we served. They were able to partake in vacation Bible school, or they were able to get some clothes or some food. Then some will say, well, we're just going to discontinue that because we don't have the time. I'm not gonna come out here on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday for 5 people, or for no people today and maybe 1 person tomorrow. My time is, that's not good use of the church's time. That's not good use of my time. That's not good use of our resources, because we're not getting. And I think it's okay that, you have an expectation or a goal, but sometimes there's that disconnect of, okay, we're just gonna, we're not gonna do it because, what does it benefit us to be open, because we got electric bills to pay, and if we got the lights on and nobody's coming in to get anything, we're actually costing ourselves money or time or whatever the resource may be.
So as it pertains to that, I think that it's important for whatever team is involved in that ministry to always have open dialogue about the things that could change or the things that need to be adjusted. Just because you come up with a plan doesn't mean that that plan is set in stone. Did we etch it into the side of a mountain like that? We you can change that. You wrote that with pen. Go get you some whiteout and let's go back to the drawing board. I think that a lot of times we get locked into what plan we think is conducive for us, and we don't take the time to consider barriers that it might be. So maybe it's not that people don't need the food, but maybe it's that you need to have a delivery option. Maybe somebody doesn't have access. Maybe they don't have a car to get there. They need the food, but they can't get there. Like what can we do to not only take this ministry, because it's very, listen, that attitude of like, well, we didn't get what we wanted out of it, so we're not going to do it. That means you didn't do it the right way anyway. That's mad self-centered. That means that you didn't do the ministry under prayer. That means you didn't do the ministry because God told you to. That means that you didn't do the ministry in the first place with the right heart. You were out of pocket when you came down with the idea. If that's your outcome, like that's the outcome of your conversation. When I used to do community dinners, which I haven't done, and want to get back to, I will say it costs money to do. But when I used to do community dinners, I always made plans for at least 100 people. And because I did it in the right spirit, God always well outdid the 100. It got to the point where the caterer was like, girl, I'm going to plan for much more than that because I don't know why you keep on saying 100. Like we've got to get to the point where we're doing the ministry because we know God called us to it, and not because we think that there's going to be any particular outcome that's going to make our name great. And so churches have to be willing to do things and then revamp things to accommodate the culture and to accommodate where we are right now.
Makes sense.
Where are we right now?
And so within that, should the expectation of the church for that service be to get that person or those people that are using that service to hopefully get them into the sanctuary, to their church one day, or just to be the blessing to those people in whatever that is? If those people never darken the doorstep of that church or any church, they may still not ever believe in God, but they take in the services. What should, in your opinion, be the takeaway from that?
My God, today. Okay, sorry. That was a pause because I'm thinking specifically about a church who only services their people. Which you so when we stand before God at the end of our lives, whether we are raptured or not, when we stand before God at the end of our lives, the last thing he's gonna ask is what church were you a part of. I think he's gonna want to know, did you do the things that I called you to do? And so I don't think it should matter if somebody is a member or not, that they receive the services that it is that they need. Now, if in fact it causes them to want to be a part of that body of people, then absolutely wonderful. Our arms are open and we're ready to receive you. Because that happens a lot, right? Somebody bless somebody and then they decide, you know what, that I want to be a blessing now and I want to do it alongside these people because these people bless me. But if that never happens, what were you called to do? Because you're not answering for them. You're answering for yourself. And so if I pay somebody's bill, or if I provide somebody with food, or if I provide somebody with clothing, that was my assignment to do. If the Lord tells me to hand $5 to a homeless gentleman on the side of the road, it's not my job then to determine what he needs to buy with that $5. Because did I do what God told me to do? I'm going to be blessed because of it. Because I did what the Lord called me to do. And the church will be blessed because you did what the Lord called you to do, not because you thought there was going to be a particular outcome.
Yeah.
And if you did it with the idea that this person needed to join the church, again, you like that's not how that's supposed to go. That's not you worried about them, and you need to be worried about your own salvation, because that attitude,
Yeah.
no, it's a no for me. And if they never believe, if they continue to struggle with their belief in God, that is their journey to have.
Yeah.
You just keep showing up. You know what I'm saying? You just keep showing up and doing what God called you to do. It's God that will make the change in their life, in their belief pattern. It's not for you to do anyway. It's for you to continue to show up and do the assignment that God called you to. And then God does the changing.
Now, within that service piece, and I think it's good, obviously, when churches are doing different things, and obviously spiritual leaders, clergy are led by God to do, like if God says, do a food pantry, do a food pantry.
Yeah.
If God says, do a youth ministry, or
Yeah.
a baby ministry or something like that, do something. I believe, God's calling is on them. I can't talk about it one way or the other because it didn't come from me. But sometimes I feel like, especially in communities where they have multiple churches, where they have certain, they have certain demographics. Sometimes one church will do the same exact ministry as another church, and there's not enough people. I mean, it could, I guess where I'm going with it is, some churches, if you've been called to do a food pantry, and another church has been called to do a food pantry, rather than doing your own food pantry and they do their own, and you only get the 4 or 5 people per food pantry, why not work together and pool your resources to where, yes, you both are doing, because to me, you're still doing God's will, because God's will said to start a food pantry, but you're actually working better because you're working with somebody else who also has maybe been given that vision, and you're actually maybe helping more people, or you're creating something that's sustainable and that won't be in 5 months where we don't have enough food, we don't have enough money to get food pantry is done with. Whereas if you team up with other churches, other like-minded organizations or groups, now you're putting something there that is sustainable. I mean, maybe that's just me, but I feel like sometimes churches, in the thought process of being, hey, look what we've got as a church, we take away from what we can all have as a community.
You're right. Selfish, right? Like, those are the parts. I'm gonna get in trouble for this because some pastors gonna hear this and they're gonna be all in their feelings. Some of the leadership that we have, they're not leading with the heart of God. They're leading with a sense of, I like my title. And because I like my title, everything has to be funneled through me. And because I think my church is the best church, when we make the flyer, make sure that my church emblem is first. And because I would rather have people come to my church rather than connect with one of your members and go to your church, then I'm not merging to do this thing. It frustrates me so, okay, because I've seen this so many times in our own community, right? It really sends me over the edge. It ticks me off. Are you doing God work? Like, again, at the end of the day, who gives a darn if somebody know your name? If they happen to learn your name, or if they happen to say, hey, who put this together? Then great. That's a great opportunity to say this church did X, Y, and Z, these are the pastors, whatever. Right? And then if that so happens to catch fire and becomes a situation, then wonderful. Right? But ultimately, if none of that happens, did you do what God called you to do? Was the assignment fulfilled? And I think that's what we have to keep at the forefront of our mind, even as clergy. I think what happens is that we are so humble when we come into, and this is me just talking about clergy folks, Chad. I think we are so humble when we come to it, because what we probably did, at least I know I did, I ran from the call for 6 years. For 6 years, I was like, nope, not me, God. Nope, not me. I not want to. Like my babies in the children's church like to say, I not want to. You know, like and I was like, Jesus, you need to pick somebody else. It's all kinds of people out here that you can pick, all kinds of folks that I think you should choose, right? And so I think we uh, come to this elevation with a real humble heart, right? Like really like knee bent and body bowed, like the Baptists like to say. And I think we come real low, which is where we're supposed to be. And then we get into this clergy space, and everybody's looking at you, and everybody's depending on you, and everybody's calling you by your title. And if they say Megan, they're correcting themselves. And then somehow within us, because we're human, then that begins to give us some like superior complex, like, and that takes away from our ability to be able to hear. If we don't stay grounded, if we don't pay attention to what God is telling us to do, if we don't pray, if we're not reading our Bible, then it's real easy to get sidetracked with your own priorities, and sidetracked with your own feelings, and sidetracked with your preference and being called bishop rather than what your mama named you. I don't feel no type of way when somebody called me Megan, because that's what my mother named me. Minister is one of the titles, and so is mother, and so is educator, and so is wife, and so like I'm not fixated on that. And I think if we can get away from being fixated on that, and get away from being fixated on my church, my people, just these people, that's weird. God calls us to love everybody. God calls us to serve everybody. And yes, there are particular people that belong to particular groups, right? Like you and I go to two different churches, but ultimately we should all be in the body of Christ, right? And that's one body.
Yep.
Many members, many parts, but but one body.
Yeah. So, last question as we wrap this up.
Okay.
We've talked service, we've talked activism. We've kind of touched on social media and that piece
Yeah.
of it. How can churches, in your opinion, use social media effectively for both service and for activism? Because they're out there, and some churches are using it and successfully doing it, some churches aren't. But in your opinion, what does successful use of social media look like when it comes to those two aspects for church?
So I love some of the churches that are doing this really well. There are people like Pastor Cosby in Louisville who are really good about doing this work. Timothy Finley is also in Louisville, really good about doing this type of stuff. I think it's appropriate to post your services. I think those are the things that social media has been beneficial for the church, right? I also think it's appropriate to get outside of the four walls of your church and make it so that communities know. So chances are all of the people following you are not solely your members. I follow New Zion Temple, and New Zion Temple, I'm not a New Zion Temple member, but I liked what the pastor was saying, and I enjoy their services, and so I catch their services on Sunday mornings when I'm getting ready for my own, because I follow them and the little tab pops up. I think it's appropriate to share out information. I love what your church does in the way that you are the media person, but I love the fact that you're not only announcing the things that are happening at the church, but you're also announcing the NAACP meetings. Like, I feel like it's fair for media teams and for churches to make way in what's happening in their communities. And so in the case of our own particular community, if there's something happening and there's some sort of protest, those social media platforms don't only populate church information. It might be your church page, but just like I could put anything on my personal page, you put anything on the church page, and God's not going to strike you.
Yeah.
You're not going to get hit by a lightning bolt because you suggested to call your legislators in the House and the Senate in Frankfurt. Like, that's not God. I don't think God's going to whip you with a stick because you suggested that maybe the church show up at a commission meeting. And so I think it's going to be about what the churches care about, and can we get to the point where the church realizes that they are that we are in this world and not of this world, and in that so we do have another home, and we do have a place that we're trying to live to go, but also we have to exist here. And I think it's important that the churches realize that existence here shouldn't be turmoil. We deserve to live well here and there, right? Like here and there. It doesn't mean that things won't show up. It doesn't mean that we won't have problems. It doesn't mean that, because as long as sin exists, there's going to be issue. So it doesn't mean that everything's always hunky dory. But why are we always beneath? We'll never live on top of the world. We always beneath.
Yeah.
What is that about? That's not how that's supposed to be. I don't believe that for 1 second. I believe that God has given us the resources, the mind, and the wherewithal. He's given us the know-how to be able to live well and to be able to help our communities live well. And so I think that churches have to be willing to open their social medias and go beyond. And I understand that the media team probably can make that decision on their own. That is still very much so the leadership. The leadership has to open up to the idea that we might share some information, or we might provide information that goes beyond these walls.
Yeah. I mean, I think you summed it up very nicely, Megan. See, that's why I wanted you on the podcast. Anybody who, obviously, if you're listening and you don't know me and Megan are cut up all the time. We are truly like family. So, I appreciate Megan. She's a very highly intelligent woman. She gets it on many levels. We have conversations all the time. So, it's good to get you on record, get you on a podcast to hear all the things that you think. And obviously a lot of this I already knew, and a lot of this we've had conversation about, but it's good to have you on here. Before I let you go, is there anything you want to say, anything that maybe I missed, or anything that you want to shed a light on before we wrap?
No, I think you did pretty good. I will say this. I love the church. And I think that the church has a lot to give. I don't think that the church is dead. There's a lot of people in this world that think that the church is dead, and they think it's just a dead structure, a dead entity. I don't believe that at all. I feel like the church has a lot to give. I feel like I feel as though the church is struggling with identity and being uncomfortable within their own structures, and that there is a place for us to continue to fight for sustainable change, as well as teach about the Lord. Like, those two things can happen in the same space. And we have to be willing to have those conversations, because when everything hits the fan, the very first place people come to is the church. So if the church is not prepared, and the church is not having conversations, and the church doesn't know what's going on, we're not able to serve in the way in which we should. Because regardless of what anybody says, every time something hits the fan, every time the world is in turmoil, every time everything's on fire and people don't know what to do, they end up on the steps of the church.
Yeah.
And so the church has to be prepared. The church has to know what's going on. They have to be aware. They have to be aware, and they have to be willing to work.
Church can't be an ostrich. Church can't be an ostrich with the head in the sand. Because
I try to not come down too far, because people are sensitive too.
Yeah.
So I try not to be too harsh, but I think that a lot of times we're not doing all of the things that we could be doing, and there's a lot of different reasons why. But I think there's a space where we could change that narrative, right? And it doesn't mean that we're Ebenezer, right? Like
Yep.
Ebenezer is the blueprint. It doesn't mean that we're Ebenezer, but you know what? You can be Ebenezer on your street. You can change the lives of the people around you. You can you might not your church might not change the entire state of Kentucky, but you know what? On the one street that you're on and the houses right behind you, you can make a sustainable difference. And every life that you touch is a life that touches another life. Like, we got to keep that in mind. We're always so worried about numbers, and we don't realize all of the people that are impacted beyond the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people we may have helped. That might have been the sustainable, especially with social media. Every time something goes right, somebody goes right to a TikTok account and they tell somebody about it. Yep. Now that one action for that one person went viral. Yeah. And so we have to keep that in mind, like that it matters. It matters that we continue to show up. It matters that we continue to serve. And it matters that we continue to live the lives that God called us to. And that's in ministry and in service and in activism.
Well, I like it. Megan Bailey, who is a minister, mother,
all the things,
activist, all the things. I appreciate you taking some time to join me on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll be talking again. You know, we talk all the time, but we may bring you back on the podcast because you did bring up the women in clergy conversation. So
that's a whole other section like that.
Yeah.
That is a whole, and that depends on where you are and what denomination you are. Yeah, that's a whole, that's a different conversation. Yeah. I know a few women that would love to have that conversation with you right here.
Well, we may have to put something together where we have maybe multiple voices on that one, but yeah. But we'll work on that off the scene. But you know, as again, I thank you so much, Megan, and as always, you are listening to the Church with No Walls podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dearbone, and like I always like to say, take care and be blessed.
Come let us go to the church with no walls. You are my brother, you are my sister. From all over the world, we are united in the house of God, in the church with no walls. La 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 la, without